Okay, so a year ago I accomplished a major milestone in my climbing by sending my first v13. Speaking of which, if you haven't watched that yet, go check out the uncut footage here.
Come on, do it, come on.
Since then, I've spent a lot of time thinking about what are the main factors and tips that helped me climb v13 in just 4 years. Now, there's a lot of things that definitely helped, but for this video, I've tried my best to just break it down into 4 areas that really helped me the most. Okay, so number 1 is focusing on intelligence and skills. Now, this might be something that seems a little counterintuitive, especially if you're newer to climbing, because it's really easy to think of climbing as just a strength-based sport. But this is actually a lesson that I learned from playing soccer for 14 years. So soccer was my lifelong sport, and I really wanted to play at a high level through college and into adulthood. But when I started to try out for college teams, I quickly realized that there were actually some kids that were just smarter players on the field. And we maybe had similar potential in terms of shooting or dribbling skills, but their intelligence made them more valuable players than me because they were better able to utilize their skills when they were actually in a game. By the time I realized this intelligence gap, I was already a little bit behind the curve and felt like I had to play catch up in order to get to the next level. Now, when I started climbing, I was fresh out of my soccer career, so all of this information was fresh in my mind, and I was really keen to not make the same mistakes. So from the beginning of when I started climbing, I was really focused on learning how to become a more intelligent and smarter climber and not just a stronger one. And focusing on the skills really enabled me to use the strengths that I did have. Now, becoming a more intelligent climber didn't just happen overnight, and it's still something I work on constantly. But having it as a priority meant that I was always finding little ways to grow here and there, and those small intentions over the years really added up. Now, number 2 is being obsessed with understanding my weaknesses, and the key word here is understanding. Understanding what my weaknesses were, and more importantly, understanding how they affected my climbing, was a crucial part in being able to make the right steps towards growth. Now, I don't think that it's beneficial to just hyper-focus on your weaknesses 24/7. I think that would be incredibly demoralizing. But the reason why it's important to actually understand what your weaknesses are is because there's some weaknesses that aren't that detrimental to your climbing, and there's other ones that are very significant and will definitely get in the way of progress. For example, there are plenty of v13 climbers that can't do a one-arm pull-up, and they might have really long arms, so one-arm pull-ups or powerful movements just are inherently harder for them. However, being able to do a one-arm pull-up is not a critical skill to climb v13, so it's actually reasonable to observe that weakness, understand it, and then be able to say, okay, it doesn't have to be my priority to work on this in order to get better at climbing. On another hand, let's say a climber has really bad finger strength. Now, finger strength is a critical limiting factor in how hard you can climb. So once you understand that weakness, then you can turn it into a priority of like, okay, this is something that I definitely need to train in order to get better at climbing. For me personally, I was in that latter boat, and finger strength is something that has always been a weakness of mine. So from the beginning, I've made it a priority to put it at the forefront of my training so I can make sure I'm working on the things that are going to be a limiting factor in how hard I can climb. A more nuanced personal example of being able to understand my weaknesses is something like core strength. Now, off the wall, I actually have pretty good core strength, but a couple years ago, I realized that my core strength on the wall was not actually that great. And what it came down to was that I realized I didn't know how to properly engage my core when I was actually on the wall. And what I actually had to do to improve that was wildly different than if I just told myself, I need to get better core strength. Understanding a small nuance like this really helped me be able to focus my training and stay on the right trajectory towards progress. And that leads me to my next point, which is number 3, trying hard boulders. Just failing over and over again on hard moves really helped me figure out what things I actually struggled with and what things I was good at. And from there, I was able to reverse engineer the process and figure out, okay, these are the things that I actually need to work on in order to get to the next level. By the time I actually sent my first v13, I had already spent weeks projecting things at this grade, so I was super comfortable projecting things at that level, and I was very aware of what my weaknesses were and what my strengths were, and I was able to find a boulder that actually really suited my skill level at that time. And when I did send, I actually wasn't even that surprised because I was really confident that I was prepared because I had put in a lot of work in order to get there. Also, trying really hard moves just makes you stronger. Even if you don't send the climb, you're going to get better just because you're showing up and doing the work and trying hard. And that leads me to point number 4, which is consistency. Out of all of these tips, consistency is the glue that holds everything together. The only reason I climbed V13 in 4 years is because I did the right things over a long period of time. In the last 4 years, I've gone to the gym 4 to 5 days a week, almost every single week. And sometimes it's been more, sometimes it's been less, but the sheer volume and time that I've invested into climbing has been the main thing that's really helped me reach the goals that I have for myself. I think it's really easy to look at me and say, wow, he progressed super fast, he must just be really talented and have freak strength. And while that might be true to some extent, I've honestly just worked really, really hard to get here. Overall, I think my talent maybe got me to around V5, and everything after that has just been a lot of work. I remember clear as day the first time I saw someone do a V8 in the gym, I was like, oh my gosh, that's actually insane. I don't think I'll ever have the finger strength in order to do that. But I just focused on showing up consistently, and the results were just a byproduct of the work and time that I was putting in. So there you have it. Those are the 4 things that I think are really critical factors in helping me reach V13 in just 4 years. Now, I do realize that I've also had a lot of experiences that not everyone is able to have. Like, I've been able to travel around the country to all these different climbing spots and get a lot of experience. And I've also had the privilege of being able to climb with a lot of people that are much stronger than me. And those things have definitely played a part. But I really do think that the 4 things I talked about are the backbone of what really helped me progress as a climber.